So thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to be talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, health and weight loss. And again, I'll be recording this so that people who can't make it can watch the replay. And at the end, if you have any questions, go ahead and type questions in the chat box if you have any questions, and I will try to get to them in the end and answer those questions, and I'll stop the recording before that. So I really feel that this is an important topic and one that many of us struggle with. So I really want you to get as much out of this as possible. So today I'm going to be sharing my top 10 tips on my approach to weight loss. And if you have any questions along the way, go ahead and type them in the chat box. And if this approach does resonate with you, I am offering a course, a weight loss for the last time 12-week digital coach that comes with coaching that I'll talk about a little bit at the end. So if you're not interested in the portion, you're welcome to jump off the call. So with that, I am going to jump right in. And for those who don't know you, I know most of you here actually, but for those who don't know me, my name is Minako Abe. And I am a U.S. board certified physician in emergency medicine and in lifestyle medicine. And currently, I'm the vice president of the Tokyo Cancer Clinic, where we do immunotherapy for cancer. And I practiced in New York City in the ER for about 15 years. And I loved working in the ER, as Tara can attest to. But I noticed that about 80% of my patients were coming in for potentially preventable things, whether it was diabetes or heart failure or strokes, heart attacks, pneumonia, trauma-related things. A lot of these things are just potentially preventable. Even 40% of cancer is preventable. So I really realized that we have to start looking at things upstream to try and prevent diseases. And now I do a lot of coaching for cancer patients, and we talk about lifestyle, and we talk about mindset. So, why would somebody who works with cancer be talking about weight loss? Well, overweight and obesity actually causes 13 different types of cancer. And you can see it on this little list right here, including breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, colorectal cancer, ovarian cancer, like a lot of cancers, 13 different types of cancers. And it's even said that 40% of cancers in the US are directly related to overweight and obesity. So that's, huge. Not to mention 80% of type 2 diabetes and 30% of cardiovascular diseases. So I figured it is 100% my duty to be teaching about weight loss. And for me, it's also a personal thing. I struggled with a lot of dieting and weight issues since I was a teenager. And since I was at my heaviest, this picture isn't even my heaviest because, when you're heavy, you tend to run away from the camera. But I've lost about 50 pounds using these strategies that I want to share with you today. So I feel like it's really my duty to share. Okay, so, what is lifestyle medicine? So it's like an evidence-based new form, new subspecialty of medicine where we treat, a lot of chronic illnesses like Alzheimer's and obesity, cancer, diabetes in conjunction with regular medicine and also lifestyle medicine. So, if you've come to my talks before, you know that I like to sort of simplify things into 4 pillars of health, nutrition, eat, sleep, move, and relax. So nutrition, sleep, exercise, and stress relief. And all of these things do impact, even if you have the genes that predispose you for Alzheimer's or the genes that predisposes you for cancer, all of our lifestyle definitely impacts whether or not these genes are expressed or not. Like I actually have one of the obesity genes. So I know I have a predisposition to it, but I know that when I change my lifestyle, it definitely impacts how heavy I get or not. So that's lifestyle. And, when it comes to weight, nutrition is definitely maybe 90% of it, but the rest really also impacts overweight, obesity, and all of these other things because it impacts our hormonal status and our hormonal balance, which governs your hunger signals, your metabolism, and your weight. So I'm going to jump right into the strategies, right? So my strategy number one is to find your deep why. Like, why is it that you want to lose weight? Why is this important to you? And it could be something as simple as, I want to look good for a wedding or event this summer. But, and that's absolutely fine. But usually there's another sort of more compelling reason that's underneath those layers. Like, why is this so important to you? Like, well, I know that I'm at risk for diabetes, and I've seen my aunt, get an amputation or undergo dialysis, and I don't want that to happen to me. So when you have a compelling why, right, it's much easier to stick with these challenges. Like, I'm a cancer survivor and I don't want a recurrence. I know my risk level is reduced if I lose a healthy weight. So a lot of these things, if you have a compelling why, because especially weight loss, it's not a sprint, it's really a marathon, right? So short-term reasons, while there are great motivators, if you really want this for the long term, having that deeper why is very important. So, and then what would happen, if you didn't lose the weight? Are there negative consequences that you don't want if that happens? And how important is this goal to you? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, right? How confident are you in achieving this goal? And studies have shown that if you rank these two last questions as an 8, 9, or 10, you're much more likely to achieve your goal. So if you ranked either of these as less than a 7 out of 10, what would it take to get it to an 8, 9, or 10? Okay, so something to think about there. Okay, this little diagram I've taken from Dr. Peter Attia, who's a famous longevity doctor. And he sees nutrition as, there's these 3 levers, what you eat, how much you eat, and when you eat. And then, we all should be paying attention to at least one of these, maybe 2 of these on a regular basis, right? What you eat and how much you eat, when you eat. And when you're really trying to dial in on either losing weight or maintaining weight, you want to pay attention to at least 2 or maybe 3 of these. Now, the problem is a lot of us are not even aware of what it is that we're eating, how much we're eating, and when we're eating. So, awareness is everything when it comes to, it comes to life, actually, but when it comes to weight and nutrition, because we eat when we're not hungry, and we often don't stop when we're full, right? And our recall on how much we eat is really terrible, which is actually not a good thing, because a lot of these nutritional studies that are done just based on patients or people's recall. But we really don't remember very well how much we eat. We're only about 11 to 62% reliable, which is, it is awful, right? So, we eat because we're bored. We eat because we're tired, because we're stressed, or because we're celebrating, right? Food is very much a social, emotional kind of thing, right? So in order to be more aware of what we're actually eating, most of us think, oh yeah, well, I eat healthy, or I don't eat very much. But when you're actually recording what it is that you're eating, you're like, oh wow, I'd forgotten about that cookie that I ate yesterday, right? So strategy number 2 is to journal your food. And it's really shown that keeping a food diary can double a person's weight loss just because you're more aware of it. And there are lots of great apps out there, like on your iPhone or whatever, but a lot of those are very complicated. Like they're very precise in like the number of calories or the macros or whatever. And I find that the more complicated it is, the harder it is to sustain it. So I actually just have this like little notebook right here, and I just very, very simply, like, I don't count calories, I don't count macros or anything. I just record, like, 6:30 a.m. black coffee, a croissant, right? That's my breakfast. Lunch, salad with, Caesar salad with chicken. Supper, pasta bolognese, whatever it is, right? Just keep it simple. I don't do, amounts or grams or anything like that. Just recording it as you go along. Because if you wait to the end of the day, or if you miss a day and you're trying to recall, obviously our recall is not very reliable. So we try and do this, throughout the day. So whatever works for you, whatever is easiest for you. Okay. So for those of you who are not in Japan, you get a little Japanese lesson today. This is a fantastic word in Japanese. It's kuchi sabishi. So kuchi is mouth and sabishi means lonely. So it means that your mouth is lonely. We eat not just for hunger reasons, for nourishment reasons, but when your mouth is lonely. So when you're standing in front of your fridge, looking at your fridge, looking for something to eat, like, are you really hungry? Or are you eating to fulfill some other need? Whether it's, because you're bored or you're stressed or, you feel like you deserve a little treat at the end of the day. So, how hungry are you really? Strategy number 3, right? Using a hunger and fullness scale. So 0 is when you're neither hungry nor full. You're just right? And -10 is when you're so hungry, like you could eat a whole buffet, right? And +10 is when you're so full, you actually feel kind of sick, right? And so obviously you never want to get to either ends of the scale. And the key is to eat when you're slightly hungry. You're hungry, but you're comfortable, right? So between a -4 and a -6, sort of in this purple zone here, right? Because if you wait till you're uncomfortably hungry, the tendency is to overeat. And then the biggest trick is to stop when you're comfortably full and not overeat. So the goal is to eat, when you're -4 to -6, and then stop when you're +4 to +6. Okay, Japanese lesson number 2. So hara hachibu. So hara means belly, your stomach. Hachibu is 80%. So you want to eat till you're 80% full. You're not 100% full, because most of us know that when you stop eating, it takes about 20 minutes for those signals to reach your brain to say, okay, I'm really full. And so how do we do this, right? Because most of us were conditioned to finish our plate, right? We don't want to waste. Being wasteful is not good. We were probably conditioned as a child. No, you have to finish your plate, otherwise you don't get dessert, right? We don't want to be wasteful. Food tastes good. And social programming, right? You don't want to be rude. So is there a way that when you reach that comfortable fullness point, you can say, okay, well, the rest I'm just going to wrap up and, bring as part of my lunch tomorrow? There's usually a point in your meal that when you're eating, you'll actually put your fork down. And, it might be if you're eating with somebody, you put your fork down and you're talking, or you stop to grab a glass of water. But try and pay attention next time. If at that point, when you put your fork down, that's usually when you're actually comfortably full. The problem is then you look down at your plate and then you say, oh, well, I have to finish my plate. And so we do this more out of habit than out of truly needing to eat more. So whether you waste the rest of your food, right, and it goes in the wastebasket, it's either going in the wastebasket or it's going on your waist. So you want to choose what is right for you. Okay. So unfortunately, in our culture, we feel that not being able to control our weight or our hunger is, some type of moral weakness. But it's absolutely not, right? It is not your fault. Hunger and weight gain are intricate, it's an intricate, I can't say that word, genetic, metabolic, socio-emotional, or evolutionary and hormonally driven process. You can see from this diagram here, there's lots and lots of hormones that are involved in hunger, satiety, and metabolism. And, I'm not going to go through all of them, of course, but there are some key ones that I want to point out. Insulin, right, is our main food storage hormone. So I'm going to be talking about that a little bit. Ghrelin, right? It sounds like your stomach is growling. That's how I always remember it. It's produced by the stomach, and that's our hunger signal. And then there's something called leptin, which is our satiety signal. And that's actually secreted by our fat cells. So you would think if you have more fat, right, we would be secreting more leptin, and then we just wouldn't feel as hungry. And that's how it's designed to work. But the problem is sort of like insulin. When your insulin is chronically high, you become insulin resistant. And when your leptin is chronically high, you end up getting leptin resistance. So that means, our satiety signals aren't quite working the way they should be. There's another one right here, GLP-1, right? There are medications that kind of target this, like Ozempic, which is in the news quite a lot lately. By blocking that, right, that impacts this insulin pathway, and that's why it treats type 2 diabetes, and that's why it treats obesity. But, the problem is, like, when you target something with a drug, once you stop it, then the weight comes right back on. So it's really not a permanent situation unless you want to be on the medications for life. So strategy number 4 is we want to lower our insulin. Like I said, insulin is a nutrient sensor. So when we eat food, we break it down into glucose. Insulin's released because it takes that energy, that glucose, and it shunts it into cells so that we can use that energy, which is great, right? But a lot of times we're eating more energy than we need to use right now, right? So, our bodies, we evolved for when food is plentiful, we can store the extra energy so that when times are scarce, then we can use that stored energy. So, it's a really brilliant system, right? The problem is we have more food than our bodies need. So you eat the food, right? Our cells take what it needs right now. And then when you have extra food, extra fuel, we store that extra fuel into what I call short-term parking. So short-term parking is when you take the glucose and it gets stored in our liver and in our muscles, right? And you can store about 3 days worth of fuel that way. So that's why if anybody's ever tried being on a ketogenic diet or done some long-term fasting, it takes about 3 days for you to go into ketosis, to use, ketones as energy rather than glucose as energy, because it gets stored like this, right? So, okay, let's say you're eating food, the fuel that can be used right away gets used right away, then you fill up your short-term parking. Well, what if you have more fuel than you need than can fill up your short-term parking? Well, then you have to store the rest of the fuel into our long-term parking. So our long-term parking, our glucose actually gets turned into triglycerides and gets stored as fat, right? And that's our long-term parking. So if you want to reverse this process and burn off more fat, we actually need less insulin because insulin is the signal to store the fat. And we need to create an energy deficit. So we are taking in less energy than we're using, and we need to reduce our insulin. Okay, so, insulin is released most with carbohydrates, especially heavily refined carbohydrates like, pure sugars, and, white flours and things like that. And then it's released a little less with proteins, and then least of all with fats. Okay. I'm not saying that you should go on a ketogenic diet or anything like that, right? And especially because fats are very high calorically. So it's not like calories don't matter at all. They, of course, do. But just, keep that in mind if you're trying to lower your insulin levels. So strategy number 5 is eat lots of veggies and eat them first, right? This diagram is made by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and they're very heavily sort of whole food plant-based. So you can see like half of the plate is filled with vegetables and fruit, right? A quarter of the plate are proteins. In this case, they put plant proteins. And then a quarter of the plate is whole grains. So there's a recent study that came out from Japan, actually, where they took healthy volunteers and they all gave them the same exact meal. The only thing is they told different groups to eat different things first. So the group that ate the vegetables first, compared to the ones that ate other foods first, they measured their glucose levels as they're eating and right after they're eating and a little bit after they're eating, and their insulin levels. And they found if you eat your vegetables first, your glucose spike is much less and your insulin levels don't rise as much. So that's a really kind of easy way to think about it. Eat lots of vegetables, half your plate, and eat all the vegetables first. Okay, and that will also, decrease your insulin levels. Okay, so high insulin is your fat storaging state, right? And so we want to lower this. And, back in the day, we used to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then you would have, your appropriate insulin rise so that you can deal with the energy that you're eating. But we didn't really eat between breakfast and lunch or lunch and dinner. And after dinner, you had this long period of fasting while you slept, right? So your body had a chance to digest. It also had a chance to be in a low insulin state. If you're a child of the 80s, like I was, we were kind of taught was you're supposed to, eat every 3 hours. You're supposed to eat little meals throughout the day, and that's going to increase your metabolism and all that, and all of that advice was not scientifically based. It was actually put out by the food manufacturing industry and the snacking industry. And they told you, you're supposed to eat every 3 hours. So what happens when you eat every 3 hours? Is that so you have your breakfast and then you have a latte or something, you have your lunch, you have a cookie, a pick-me-up in the middle of the afternoon, you have your dinner, and then you have dessert or, a cocktail or something after dinner. And so all day long, you're in your high insulin fat storing state. And then to make things worse, we're sleeping a lot less longer than we used to in the past. So our bodies really have very few hours in the day to be in this low insulin fat burning state. So strategy number 5 is don't eat around the clock, right? You want to give your bodies a chance to rest. And this was a really cool study that was done. Granted, it was done on mice, where they took obese mice, they fed it some food, and they kind of gave it to them all around the clock. So they were just kind of constantly dribbling the food. And then as the mice ate the food, they got more obese and unhealthy, right? They took the same mice and the same food in the exact same amount, but they gave it to them only for 8 hours of the 24-hour day. And they ate the exact same food, the exact same amount, and yet these mice, they were still obese, but they became fit. And there was a huge difference. And they even did a study where they took lean mice and gave them a super unhealthy diet with a lot of sugar in it too. And they fed them around the clock, and no surprise, these mice became obese. But when you gave them the same food, the same amount, and restricted the time they were going to eat it by 8 hours, then the time restricted fed mice stayed lean and stayed fit, right? And it was the exact same food, exact same amount. So, okay, so why is weight loss so hard, right? I call this a masterclass rather than just a webinar because most of us know what to do, right? There's no knowledge gap. It's the implementation gap that everybody gets stuck with, right? It's hard to get motivated. It's hard to stay consistent. We tend to think, oh, I just have no willpower, or, I had a stressful day and I deserve this treat, or I ate that donut, I already messed up. So, I'm going to start again tomorrow, or I'll start again after the weekend, right? Logically, we know that this doesn't make sense, but it's so easy to fall into this trap, right? So we need a mindset shift in order to make things consistent and to be able to stick with things for the long term. And my strategy number 6 for this is to practice self-compassion. You want to be compassionate with ourselves because, you can't beat yourself up and be negative about it and just, restrict, because that's not going to feel good and that's not going to last. So have compassion for yourself because our brains do this for survival. We evolved this way for survival to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and to conserve energy. Right? So, of course, we're going to go reach for the sweet treat at the end of the day when you're tired. or if you're sad, right? Because we're seeking pleasure. You want that sugar boost, the dopamine boost. It's just the way our brains are wired. We're wired to avoid pain and to conserve energy. So we're not lazy because we don't want to go to the gym, right? We're actually just wired for survival that way, to avoid pain and conserve energy. So rather than think of these things as like, I have no willpower, or, I deserve this treat, I already messed up, we can actually change your mindset so that we think of things in a better way. And strategy number 7 is to reframe our thoughts, right? A lot of these thoughts that we have are just not helpful to us. And this is a model based on cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That, if we're faced with a situation, we have a thought about that situation. And the way we think about the situation produces an emotion. And all of our behavior, our actions are driven by emotion. So if we're thinking a negative thought, like, I can't help my weight, it's just genetic. Well, that's kind of very defeatist feeling, right? And if you're feeling defeatist, you start to feel very unmotivated, which then, obviously is going to impact your behavior, right? So some of these are common thought errors. This one, I think that I'm a foodie, but I use this for a long time. Like, I'm just a foodie, right? I love food. I can't give up food. Does this thought actually serve me? Right? Or this treat is only available now. So it's really special and I better eat it now because otherwise, I'm never going to get a chance to eat it. Well, is this really true? Right? Things like Girl Scout cookies, right? Their marketing is all based on the fact that it's only available during a certain time of year. And, you feel good because you're supporting these Girl Scouts. And, this treat is only available now. So, you should buy dozens of boxes, right? But is this true? I bet if you looked online, even when Girl Scouts aren't selling cookies, you could still buy it if you really wanted it. So is it worth it? Is it true? Do these thoughts serve me? And if the answer is no, then we can change those thoughts, right? So instead of thinking, I can't help my weight, it's genetic, you can change your thought to, well, yeah, I'm never going to be waif like thin. That's just not my body type, but I can absolutely control how much I eat and how big I get, or how thin I get within those confines, and that's okay. Right? I'm just a foodie and I love food. Well, you can still be a foodie and love food. There are plenty of thin people who are foodies. You just don't have to eat all the things all the time. You can still totally enjoy food. And, this treat is only available now. Of course, you can change your thoughts. Well, no, actually, if I looked online, I could probably find that specialty food. So do you really want it? Or are you just thinking that you need it because you think that, well, it's only available now and otherwise it's scarce? So that's strategy number 7, reframing your thoughts. And this is the part that really is missing for most diet programs, right? Diet programs are generally, this is what you should be eating, and as long as you follow it, you're fine. But we all live in real life, real world. Things happen. And it's difficult to restrict your food to that degree and to maintain it. So we really need to figure out what works for you, right? That you can follow for the long run. Okay. Then the other thing is like, oh, I just need to get motivated, right? You actually don't need motivation if it's your habit. Like, we don't need to get motivated to brush our teeth, right? It's just what you do, because you know that if you don't brush your teeth after a while, your teeth and your mouth just start to feel really gross, but you have to train your kids to brush their teeth, right? Until it becomes habit. Right. And then eventually you sort of like if you feel like you're always, overeating and you're feeling bad, you're feeling kind of gross at the end of your meal, by the time you train yourself to stop at 80% full, then it's just what you do. You don't have to motivate yourself to change your eating behavior. And the other thing is, you don't want to implement big changes all at once. Right? Why is it that New Year's resolutions, most people fail, right? By the time, February comes around, there's actually a fall off the wagon day which is the second Saturday of February, right? Because that's when all the gym memberships drop off and, the shiny new diet, stops working, right? Usually by that time, people kind of fall off the wagon and quit their New Year's resolution. And the reason why is because, in the beginning of the year, you write out these great lists. Like, okay, I'm going to clean up my eating. I'm going to go to the gym every day, and I'm going to declutter the house and become very organized, right? You can't implement all of those things all at once. It just doesn't last. So you want to build habits gradually. Strategy number 8. And practice something called habit stacking, right? So if you add a good habit that you want to implement in your life and you combine it with a habit that you already have, right, then it becomes much easier to implement and for it to stick. So for example, let's say at 8 p.m., I put my kids to bed, make them brush their teeth and put them to bed. At the same time, if I brush my teeth too, then I make that my signal to, okay, I'm not going to do any late night snacking. And, that's the last time I put anything in my mouth, right? And if you're already doing one thing, it's easy to combine that with another thing. For example, when you're getting ready for bed, lay out your exercise clothes right in front of the bed. So when you open your eyes, that's the first thing you see. Just before you even half awake, right? Grab those and put it on, and then you're dressed to go exercise, so you might as well just go exercise. So you're combining those two habits together. Or let's say, it takes 5 minutes for your coffee to brew in the morning. Okay, I'm going to meditate for those 5 minutes while my coffee is brewing. And that's a lot easier than saying, okay, all at once, I am going to stop snacking at night and I'm going to exercise every morning and meditate every morning, right? So doing that gradually, one at a time, is a much easier way to make it stick. Okay. So strategy number 9, managing your sleep and your stress. So why do we seek food when we're tired or stressed? Right? We want that quick fix. We want that quick energy, so quick glucose, and also certain foods will definitely give you a spike of dopamine, right? Which is your reward chemical, your feel good sort of chemical. And it's found that with less sleep, your ghrelin, right? That's your hunger hormone, goes up, and your satiety hormone, leptin, goes down. So when you're tired and hungry, right, you want to eat more and you can't get full. And it's been shown that when you're underslept, we tend to eat 200 to 300 more calories without even thinking about it. And we tend to make poor food choices. We gravitate towards, the quick energy, like pizza and fried foods and sweets. So managing sleep is really important. And also stress, right? When we're stressed, your adrenaline's pumping, your stress hormones, cortisol is up. Our bloodstream actually gets flooded with sugar because it's that fight or flight response. We do want to, our body's preparing to fight or take flight. But when we're chronically stressed, it's the same. Our cortisol levels still stay high. So our insulin and our blood glucose is high for a longer period of time, which predisposes us to insulin resistance. And they found that people who are stressed and people who are underslept, and they're also trying to diet, they tend to lose more muscle mass rather than fat. Because if your insulin levels are higher, then you're still in that kind of fat burning, fat storing state. So you tend to hold on to your fat. So self-care is not selfish. It's absolutely critical when you're trying to take care of your health and when you're trying to manage your weight. So, okay. Strategy number 10, we are stronger in community. So even if you're an introvert like me, believe it or not, I'm an introvert, we gain so much from being in a supportive community, right? When you're in community, you have accountability, you have encouragement, emotional support, you can share advice and resources, and it's a lot easier to motivate each other. And they've found in studies that people who try and lose weight in a group setting tend to lose more weight, and they're also able to maintain their weight loss. And one study actually showed that you were 8 times more likely to drop 5 to 10% of your body weight when you're doing this in a group setting rather than trying to do it alone. So find a community to do this with. So to summarize, right? When you eat, what you eat, how much you eat, right? What you eat, definitely you have to pay attention to what it is you're eating, right? Veggies first, keep half of your plate veggies and go for the whole foods, less highly processed, less refined sugars, because that's going to spike your glucose and spike your insulin. And, make sure you're getting enough protein and healthy fats just so that you're satiated. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it with things that are high in calories, but you want to make sure that you're feeling full. So keep your glycemic index fairly low so that our insulin is staying low. How much you eat, again, using the hunger scale, trying to eat when you're not overly hungry and stopping when you're 80% full. Again, that's mindful eating. And then when you eat, right? You don't want to be eating around the clock. You don't want to be eating for emotional reasons, right? You want to eat when you're actually hungry and not because you're stressed or you're bored or you're sad. And just making sure that you're allowing for lowered insulin. So, the thing that that these three levers share in common is really the mindful piece, right? So this is super, super important in our strategies for success, right? Number one is finding your compelling why you're actually doing this and trying to, what it takes to be confident enough to accomplish this. Number two, being aware, using like a little food journal. Number three, making sure that you're, stopping at 80% full using the hunger and fullness scale. Number four, keep your insulin low so that you stay in the fat burning state instead of the fat storing state. So you don't want to eat around the clock, and make sure, you give your body enough time to digest and rest and, transfer. It's all about metabolic flexibility, from being able to transition from when you're storing energy and when you're actually able to release the energy. Practicing self-compassion, right? You can't beat yourself thin, right? It's really, really demotivating to do so. You're doing this out of love for yourself because you're taking care of yourself, right? And being able to reframe those negative thoughts to set you up for success. You want to build your habits very gradually so they stick. And then you don't need to be motivated, right, if it's just habit. Number 9, manage your sleep, manage your stress, right? Set yourself up so that hormonally you get to be in a fat burning state rather than a fat storing state. And number 10, you're much stronger in community. So those are my top 10 strategies. And, I have actually created this approach. So if it resonates with you, I have actually created a 12-week program. I did this in 2 different groups through Zoom last year. But I wanted to make it more accessible because everybody has their different schedules. So rather than being able to meet at a specific time, this is all video recorded and it's self-paced. And the content is in video lecture format, and I made it bite-sized. So everybody's very busy. You don't want to be spending a lot of time doing this. So once a week, it's less than 30 minutes of content, but it's in sort of bite-sized, sort of 5-minute chunks. And then I also send you this book, right, which is the Weight Loss for Less Time workbook. And in the book, each chapter goes with the video content, and there are actually some exercises that you can do that you write in here as you follow along. And then, you can see the table of contents there. Like every week, we do sort of a deeper dive into, the science behind, stress, your hormones, your gut microbiome, and how to set up a good gut microbiome in order to help nudge you towards, more fat burning state. And a lot of this has to do with mindset. So it's not, eat this, do this. It's more of a mindset, and I share with you different tools to be able to tackle things like, over desire, the scarcity mentality, like you have to finish your whole plate, and self-sabotaging. So, and with that, people who sign up will get 2 30-minute one-on-one coaching sessions with me to tackle on their individual challenges. And then the other really key part of this program is that we have a members only private Facebook community where you have 24/7 access to me and also the fellow people who are doing this in community with you. So I really want this to be successful for you, whether or not you do this course or not, right? But just for this course, it's probably not a good fit for people who, want the quick fix, right? Or a fad diet with rigid nutritional rules, because the whole point is to be able to find out what works for you. And I don't give you a meal plan. We do share in the Facebook group, like some, recipes and stuff like that that work for each other. But it's not, this is your own personalized plan. And it's not a good fit for people who are, have the mindset that like, okay, I'm going to do this until I hit my desired goal and then go back to eating normally, right? Because normally, whatever that was for you is what got you to this current weight that you're at now. So, the whole point is to create a new normal. What is a way that you eat, that you love eating, that nourishes your body, that you feel good with, that you can stick with for life, right? Because you can do any diet and all diets will work. But then as soon as you go back to normal, which is why 90% of people who lose a significant amount of weight end up regaining it back. Okay. And this necessitates some personal development, right? Digging into the deeper why of why you want to do this, why you want to improve your life. And our mindset tools are really personal development tools. So if you're not ready to work on personal development, changing from the inside out, this is probably not a good fit for you. This is a good fit for if you're very curious, you're willing to explore what works best for you and your body, because everybody's a little bit different. And if you're wanting to look for a sustainable lifetime of good health, if you're open to personal growth and able to you want to make these mindset shifts, because the great thing about these tools is that they can be used for anything, not just our relationship with food, right? It can be used for relationship with work or with money and finances or relationship challenges. Like all of these tools can be applied not just to food, but just in your personal life. Okay, so frequently asked questions. How much weight do people typically lose? And in our program, the average was about 12 pounds over the first 12 weeks. So it was a pretty significant amount of weight, I think 1 pound per week or so. And again, everybody is different. So if you're very insulin resistant, sometimes it takes a while to get the ball rolling. And because, this is their strategies, not a plan per se, some of our group members actually did go on to continue to lose weight, another 10 to 15 pounds. Since then, some people, stopped doing what they were doing and then, gained it back. But you always have this information that is available to you. Okay. Any special meal plans or supplements? No, because this program was really meant to find what works for you, your lifestyle, your life situation, family, or work schedules, because everybody's different, right? That said, in the very beginning, we actually do an insulin reset, right? And so I challenge people to do a no sugar, no flour detox challenge during the first 21 days to try and reset your taste buds, to really lower your insulin levels in the first 21 days. And then we sort of gradually reincorporate a better way of eating for yourself after that initial reset. Can I try it and cancel? I'm sorry, but no. If you do this, I really want you to be in the mindset that you are all in, right? You have lifetime access to the course, to the group, and because I physically mail you the workbook, then, unfortunately, I don't do cancellations. Okay, so the $1 million question is, what is the investment? So the investment is $1,200 US. And I know that sounds like a lot, and I probably would never even dream of, spending that much money on myself. But, at the same time, I wouldn't blink to spend that amount on, summer camp for my kids. Or, if you think about, massage therapy a couple times a month. So It is 12 weeks worth of course materials. You do get the physical workbook. You get 2 one-on-one coaching sessions, and you do have 24/7 access to me and to our Weight Loss for the Last Time community on Facebook. And then, you get healthy weight for life, which I think is pretty priceless. So, and the official launch goes out on June 1st. And if you do decide to purchase before June 1st, you can type in the coupon code pre-purchase 20 and you get 20% off, which brings the price way down to $960, which I think is really a good deal. So if I do say so myself. Okay, so I want to thank you so much for your attention. And remember this, when you are trying to improve yourself, improve your life, you are 100% worth it. Okay, whatever you do. Okay, please take care of yourself. You are worth it. If you have any questions, you can email me directly at hello@drminako.com. And this is the QR code and the URL if you're interested in purchasing the course.